Good morning and welcome to First Parish Brewster. We are a Unitarian, Universalist, welcoming congregation of people of diverse philosophies and beliefs, people of various cultures and races, sexual orientations, gender identities, abilities, and socioeconomic backgrounds. Whoever you are, wherever you are on your path, may this be a place of rest and restoration on your journey. For those of you who may be first-time visitors this morning, welcome. Welcome on this morning, which we make sacred by our presence together. A big welcome to people calling in. We are glad you are here. I am Twinks Hastings, Director of Lifespan Religious Education, happy to be welcoming you to the service this morning with Maggie Baker on tech support, Donica Buckley, our music director, and our guest preacher today, Laura Wagner. I'm going to introduce Laura in a second, but first Donica is going to introduce our guest musician. Donica, we can't hear you. I think you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a fancy new headset that worked great yesterday, but I forgot to test it this morning. My apologies. So sorry. Let's start over again. Okay, this is Leah. Leah Morris is our guest musician this morning. A great voice, singing great songs. That is the simplest way to introduce you to her music. While she often draws comparisons to other female phenoms like Tracy Chapman, Joni Mitchell, and Annie DeFranco, Leah's sound seamlessly blends gospel, jazz, country, and R&B into her own style, soul folk. Leah was born in Baltimore to a father who toured the world playing trumpet in the funk band Black Heat, and a mother who dreamed of opera while performing with her siblings in the Jones Family Gospel Singers. As soon as she could speak, Leah was singing on the pulpit of the Baptist church. When she discovered the acoustic guitar as a teenager, she began teaching herself to play by writing songs. Leah's final year in high school in Germany was in a classical conservatory, where she sang with the jazz ensemble Black and White and co-wrote with the British pop trio Indigo Wild. Having shared the stage with luminaries including Odetta, Marvis Staples, and Dar Williams, Leah performs at a far-ranging array of venues, including art centers, universities, festivals, and places of worship. She is consistently acknowledged by the Washington Area Music Association as one of the region's best vocalists, songwriters, and recording artists. She's a graduate of the prestigious Artist in Residence program at the Music Center at Strathmore in Bethesda, Maryland, and a beloved children's music performer among DC families. I'm so delighted that we have 3 songs from Leah Morris this morning, and I hope you enjoy them.
Thank you, Donica. And Laura Wagner, MSW, is the Executive Director of UU Mass Action, which is the state action network for Unitarian Universalists in Massachusetts. Her role is to organize and mobilize UUs to confront injustice and to provide opportunities for us to live our values and principles. Laura has been a Unitarian Universalist for more than 25 years. During this time, she has held many lay leader positions, but her primary focus has always been social justice. And a new update is that in answering the call to UU the vote, Laura was elected to the Marlborough City Council in 2019. Welcome, Laura. We are so lucky to have you leading worship this morning. Next Sunday, you're invited to join Rev Jessica and our Stewardship Committee as they lead a service kicking off our stewardship campaign this year, Faith in Action. All are welcome at 10 a.m. Following the service next Sunday, there will be a presentation from the Finance Committee giving an update about where we are financially 6 months into this year. You will also hear from the board as well. All are welcome and encouraged to attend at 11:30 next Sunday. The link for that will be in next Friday's angle. In community news announcements, Has your committee RSVP'd for the Come Together meeting? Saturday, February 27th, 9 to 11 a.m., we will be gathering all committees to share how the year is going. The goal is to have at least one member of every committee, group, or board in attendance, and we encourage all of those who are curious to attend in order to learn more about FPBUU leadership. Please RSVP to cove@firstparishbrewster.org if you plan to attend. And all are welcome to join us on Saturday, February 27th for a ritual honoring 1 year of the pandemic. Please bring a stone with a word or phrase written onto it to add to our altar. This will occur in the northeast corner of the solar field parking lot. Please bring masks and stay in your car until instructed to walk to the altar. If your last name is A through L, please come between 1 and 2 p.m. And if your last name is M through Z, please come between 2 and 3 p.m. And if you are partnered and in a couple and you have different last names, just choose whatever hour works best for y'all. Welcome visitors and new members. Come visit us on Saturday, February 27th between 1 to 3 p.m. in the solar field parking lot during the rock ritual. Get more information about the community at First Parish UU. The membership table will be set up under a tent during the stone ritual. New members are welcome to come and meet us and sign the membership book. So ends our announcements. You're invited to have a chalice nearby for our chalice lighting. And our services are captioned. You need to turn on the caption in your menu bar. Our chat will be off for today's service. Welcome to worship today. It is so good to be together. With Love as My Guide by Cindy Terriazzo. Amidst the swirl of life's challenges, fears, and even moments of crisis, I make time to gaze at the night sky, to see the vastness there, and to remember that this moment in time is but a flicker, not an inconsequential flicker, for what I do and think now does matter. My work, though, is to let the debris of the world pass by, while I anchor myself to what I know is true. Love, kindness, compassion, and caring for this precious life, this precious planet, and all that calls this place home. This is my North Star. With love as my guide, how can I possibly go wrong?
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain,
for purple mountains' majesty above the fruited plain. America, America, love shed its grace on thee, and crown thy good
with brotherhood
from sea to shining sea, and crown thy good
Beautiful. This morning's chalice lighting comes from Bruce Southworth, A Communion of Heart and Soul. For the gift of this day and for our community of spiritual nature and nurture and compassion, we give thanks. We light this chalice as a symbol of our faith. May our sparks meet and merge in communion of heart and soul. In this morning's, I invite you to, as we enter a spirit of meditation and prayer, to center ourselves to this morning's worship. I'd like to share these words from John Daniel before we enter a moment of quiet reflection. Among the wonders of our lives, we are alive with one another. We walk here in the light of this unlikely world that isn't ours for long. May we spend generously the time we are given. May we enact our responsibilities as thoroughly as we enjoy our pleasures. May we see with clarity. May we seek a vision that serves all beings. May we honor the mystery surpassing our sight. And may we hold in our hands the gift of good work and bear it forth whole, as we were born forth by a power we praise. This to this one earth, this homeland of all we love.
This morning's reading is a reflection on the Reverend Dr. King's understanding of beloved community, written by Reverend Walter Lafore, a UU minister in Poughkeepsie, New York. Dr. King believed that the cornerstone for the beloved community was love and justice, and that the foundation of the beloved community was integration and total relatedness. He believed that love and trust were higher values than fear and hatred. That peace and justice are not just words and concepts, but a powerful counterbalance to war and military conflict. He saw the struggle to resolve conflicts rather than the absence of conflict as the fertile ground upon which to build the beloved community. In other words, for King, the beloved community was not about there being no conflict, no hurt or pain. It was about how we deal with such things. King's definition of love is really wonderful. The binding power that holds the universe together, tying us in the single garment of destiny, caught in an inescapable network of mutuality. Every week, we have the practice of splitting our plate, and today's split plate will go to the incredible work of UU Mass Action. Laura's going to tell us a little about that work now.
Thank you so much, Twinks. And we appreciate this congregation's continued support. UU Mass Action, as we mentioned, this is our state action network. There's 23 state action networks in the nation, and I'm so grateful to be the director of the one here in Massachusetts. We have 25,000 Unitarian Universalists in Massachusetts and 142 congregations. When we work together, we have power. There are big problems that need to be overcome, and some of our core issue areas include immigrant justice, economic justice, ending the torture of solitary confinement here in Massachusetts, climate and environmental justice, indigenous rights, and forgetting one. There's 5, but this is a huge lift to be able to tackle all these forms of oppression, and we only do it together. So I'm so grateful for the ongoing support of everybody here at Brewster and all the UUs in Massachusetts. Thank you for sharing your generosity, and I'm so happy to be here with you all today. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. And there are several ways that you can give. Maggie has put the text to give in the chat box. And you can also send a check to the office, and you can put split plate with the date of the service in the memo line. The offertory will now be gratefully received.
Together we stand with our voices lifted. Together we sing as one choir. Together we stand with our hearts united, our flames ignited, our lives bright to inspire. We can always stand when we sing together. We can always stand up strong. When we join our hands, we can vision higher, ignite a fire that burns bright to inspire. All are welcome here. All are welcome here. All are welcome here. Our love is bright to inspire. Come, won't you come, come and sing with us. Won't you come, come and sing with us. Won't you come here. Love is bright to inspire. Together we can always stand, come voices together. Together we can always stand up strong. Together we join our hands, we can hearts united, our flames ignited, our loves is bright to inspire. Together we can always stand, come voices together. Together we can always stand up strong. Together we join our hands, we can hearts united, our flames ignited, our loves is bright to inspire. Together we can always stand, come voices together. Together we can always stand up strong. Together we can join our hands, we can hearts united, our flame ignited, our lives is bright to inspire.
Thank you for inviting me to be here with you today. I'd like to begin by acknowledging whose land we're on. What is now called Brewster is the land of the Wampanoag and the Nauset people. It's important to acknowledge the painful history of genocide and forced removal from this territory, and to honor and respect the many Indigenous peoples still living on these lands today. In making this acknowledgement, we affirm Indigenous sovereignty and commit to dismantling the systems of oppression that have displaced Indigenous people. Our faith calls us to name the crimes committed by colonial settlers against Indigenous people and work to dismantle systems of oppression that continue to harm Black, Indigenous, and people of color today. I think the importance of why we must confront our history is best reflected in the James Baldwin quote when he said, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. Now is the time to face the fact that racism is an existential threat to this country. The possibility of what we can become as a nation is within our grasp. We can embark on a new way of being and redefine who we are as a community, a state, and a nation. But this won't happen unless white America is ready to get real, let go of the myths, and start listening. And it won't happen until we understand what it means to work together. One of the most important things we can do right now is to really listen to people who have been the targets of institutionalized systemic oppression. We need to think about how we will work to be in right relationship with each other when thinking about how we create more just social and economic systems. When engaging in justice work, it's also important to be deeply connected to one another on an emotional level, to create space to be able to listen and understand one another. Fighting for justice so often leads to despair. If we want to stay committed, we need to stay connected. My motivation to fight for justice is rooted in the pain I had to overcome in my early years. I'm a survivor of an abusive childhood. By the time I was 14, I knew I could no longer survive in my home and I left. The first time I left, I made it on my own for about 2 weeks and then I was arrested. And from that moment and for the next 10 months, the people who thought they were helping me placed the focus on me, what I did wrong, and the changes I had to make. Well-intentioned people tried to teach me about the importance of school and family and told me that if I just hung in there, my teenage years would pass and my adult life would be so much better. What was happening in my home was not addressed, and the people who caused so much harm were not held accountable. My experience was irrelevant to those who intervened, and their goals for me were instead prioritized. We see this approach so often repeated in charitable nonprofit work. In her book, The Shock Doctrine, Naomi Klein shares a cautionary story that exemplifies this point. The 2004 tsunami decimated much of the coastal communities along the Indian Ocean. Many of the people hardest hit were fisher people living along the coastal shores. The tsunami wiped the beaches clean, killing hundreds of thousands of people in 14 countries. In many of these countries, the governments coveted the land and for years wanted to remove people so that they could build expensive resort hotels. In one Sri Lankan community, immediately following the tsunami, the first thing the government did was erect a fence to block the survivors from returning to what were their coastal homes. The people were relocated far inland in a desolate area and provided tin and particle board shelters that were supposed to be temporary. They were not temporary. The people forced to live in these sweltering shacks without running water were soon forgotten. And the billions of dollars of international relief money intended for the people who lost everything went instead to building $800 a night resort hotels. In the midst of this cruel injustice, a well-meaning NGO, a nonprofit organization, arrived and with little understanding of the situation, provided what they thought was help in the form of a couple of canoes. From a distance, this may have seemed like a good idea, right? But in reality, the canoes were a cruel reminder of the people's former life. People who were now relocated far inland, barred from access to the sea, and desperately poor. The people who delivered the canoes probably felt good about their gift and had no idea of the pain they had caused. For me, this story is a stark reminder that at UU Mass Action, I never want to be the organization that delivers canoes. I often think about that first early intervention in my youth. I finally told people in power what they wanted to hear, and I was released. But nothing had changed in my home, and I left again. And this time I was gone for a year, during which time I learned a lot about how marginalized people live, the impact of systemic oppression, what it feels like to be outside the circle of humanity. I learned what it means to be a sacrificial person. Eventually, the time came when survival meant leaving the life I was living, and enough had changed that I was able to return home. When I was ready to make this change, there were pathways available to help me meet my goals. I had a place to call home, without which very little can be accomplished. I was able to find a job because I didn't have a criminal record, which would have made this exceedingly difficult, if not impossible. I'm often reminded of my story and how not having a criminal record benefited me when fighting for justice with others by working to reform our criminal law system. I invite you to take a moment now and think about a time when you needed help. Who listened? Who listened to you deeply enough that they didn't bring you a canoe? If you feel comfortable, share that where you are right now. I don't know if the chat's enabled, you could chat it, but say it out loud. Bring that name into that space, because that is a very important person in your life. When the resources exist that actually meet a need, people have a much better chance of overcoming obstacles. I was able to eventually pass a high school equivalency test because a program that I could access existed. I earned a college degree because I was able to get a job at a large corporation that offered a college tuition program, and I was able to attend classes at night. I share my story because it demonstrates the damage caused by good intentions and by not listening to impacted people. I didn't need people telling me about the importance of honoring family. I needed a family that wouldn't hurt me. I also didn't need anyone teaching me about why education is important. I wanted that more than anything, but it's exceptionally difficult for a student to learn when they don't have a stable home life. If my early intervention experience was different, my story would be very different. We do not have time right now to waste resources or time on misinformed good intentions. If we want things to change in this world, we have to be prepared to listen to those who are struggling and address all the pressing problems we face today quickly and effectively. My experience is likely different from many of you here today, but I'm sure there are parts to which many of you can relate. You know what you need in your life, but too often we find ourselves in situations where people have power over us and are quick to impose their demands and expectations for outcomes. This is painful for any individual. It is also painful for a community of people, especially those communities that are the target of racist policies and are marginalized and neglected as a result. We have entered unprecedented times, and we are called to completely change the social contract and the systems that are causing harm to so many people. Naomi Klein tells us that the economic and social systems that operate now rely on the acceptance of sacrificial people and places. Our economy is based on the pursuit of the cheapest labor source, not on the well-being and respect of workers. The climate crisis and our dependence on fossil fuels perpetuates the need for sacrificial people and places. For generations now, we have known that places like Cancer Alley in Louisiana exist, which have condemned the people living there to a lifetime of illness and disease. And now fracking and the extraction of oil on indigenous land pollutes the land and air we breathe and threatens water sources for countless people, causing harm that will last for generations. Sacrificial people and places must no longer be tolerated. We need to start listening to those who are being harmed and not bring them canoes when what they tell us they need is justice. We have environmental communities right here in Massachusetts, communities like Chelsea and East Boston, and also Springfield and Holyoke, which have the highest rates of asthma in the country and are already paying too high a price for our collective dependence on dirty energy sources. And they have been fighting for changes for many years. The toxic conditions in which the people in these communities are forced to live have taken a significant toll on their health and well-being. The pandemic has forced us all to pay attention to the environmental impacts on health. It has exposed the conditions that result when communities are neglected and underfunded for generations. The pandemic has made it clear that access to medical care, safe housing options, toxins in the environments, and the economy are all risk factors in people's well-being. It took this tragedy to remind us that we are all truly connected. The moment calls for radical change and a comprehensive response that sacrifices no one. For decades, scientists and environmental activists have been sounding the alarm and calling for a seismic shift in how we think about energy. This radical shift in thinking needs to be extended to housing, transportation, healthcare, both physical and mental health, employment, and more. The systems in place are not working and they are perpetuating harm. When the lethality of the pandemic sunk in, whole states went into shutdown. People completely shifted how they lived their lives. And in networks that existed, people immediately shifted their support to those whose survival was most precarious. I'm proud to say that at UU Mass Action, we raised almost $70,000 for our partners who provided crucial support to immigrants and people in prison. We raised money, most of that money in a few short weeks. It was a clear example of what can happen when we listen to those who are most impacted and provide them with what they actually need. It is an example of understanding our connection to a situation and reasons why we are taking action are crystal clear. Our understanding of the Black Lives Matter movement also became much clearer this spring following the death of George Floyd. The events that happened in January in DC were yet another clear reminder of how interactions with police vastly differ between white people and people of color. And to be clear, I do not uniformly condemn all police officers. The problem is not about individuals. It is about systems of power and the power those systems have over individuals. We are called in this moment to understand the underlying injustice that is at the root of climate disruption, economic inequality, food and housing instability, access to medical care, the threats faced by immigrants, mass incarcerations, and threats to our democracy. I know this feels overwhelming for many of you who often ask me, how can we possibly work on everything at once? The answer is we have no choice. This does not mean that every person has to actively engage in every issue. That's not even possible. What we need is a unifying vision that centers the priorities of those who are most impacted. What we are each called to do is the work that moves you most. while also understanding this unifying vision. For me, it helps to think about this in terms of building a house. Building a house requires special skills such as those of a plumber, an electrician, a carpenter. Each has a specialized skill set, and they don't have to know everything about all the other tasks involved with building a house, but they do have to work together with the same shared understanding of the house they are building. We are called to understand the house we are building in this moment. It needs to be big enough to fit everybody. We each need to contribute based on our own skills and what we are passionate about. It's also important to know that what we're building actually meets a need, and we're not just showing up with a couple of canoes. We can address all this at once. At UU Mass Action, our commitment to you is to provide pathways in which you can actively live our shared values and principles. We work in partnership and with coalition members where the voice and leadership of those who are directly impacted are centered. We understand how difficult it is to dismantle systems of oppression and that it cannot be done alone. It's crucial that we understand what it means to build power that's strong enough to create the world we want to live in. I was saved because I finally found people who listened to me and helped provide what I needed, not what someone else thought I needed. We are each called to listen to one another and truly be in relationship. Each and every one of us is needed in this moment. We need to educate ourselves and deepen our understanding of what's happening around us. We need to be in right relationship with one another and listen to those who are most impacted. We have to commit to action and not let what we can't do get in the way of what we can do. And we must remember to take care of each other along the way. I hope we can continue to count on you. We need each other more now more than ever. And blessed be, and may it be so.
Morally, I was led to nonviolence because I felt that it was the best moral way to deal with the problem. We were seeking to establish a just society. And it was my feeling then, and it is my feeling now, that violence is certainly much more socially destructive, and it creates many more social problems than it solves. So I was led to nonviolence for deep moral reasons. And I turned to it because I felt that it was the morally excellent way to deal with the problem of racial injustice in our country.
There is no freedom, the wise man said, let justice roll down when the poor cry out for shelter and bread. Let justice roll down like a mighty stream. Oh, children, don't you get weary, walk together, believe in the dream. When the way gets rough, we'll make a new way. Let justice roll down like a mighty stream. Hatred will never drive out hate. Let love roll down, roll down. Remember, our hearts can make us great. Let love roll down like a mighty stream. Oh, children, don't you get weary, walk together, believe in the dream. When the way gets rough, we'll make a new way. And let your love roll down like a mighty stream. When brutality threatens our daughters and sons, let peace roll down, roll down. May our voices rise up louder than the guns. Let peace roll down like a mighty stream. Oh, children, don't you get weary, walk together, believe in the dream. When the way gets rough, we'll make a new way. And let peace roll down like a mighty stream. by step, one by one. Let justice roll down, roll down. They can kill the prophet, but the dream lives on. Let justice roll down like a mighty stream. Oh, children, don't you get weary. Walk together, believe in the dream. When the way gets rough, we'll make a new way. Let justice roll down like a mighty stream.
I turned to it because I felt that it was the morally excellent way to deal with the problem of racial injustice in our country.
So beautiful. Our closing benediction today comes from Reverend Dr. Cynthia Landrum. We leave this gathered community, but we do not leave our connection, our concerns, our care for one another. Our service to each other, to the world, and to our faith continues until we are together again, friends. Be strong, be well, be true, be loving.
Thank you, Laura, for the work that you do in the world and for this beautiful service. We are blessed to have you with us today. Shortly, we're going to unmute everybody so we can do our weekly cacophony of highs and loves into the space. And after that, we will mute again and invite those who are going to stay for our coffee hour to stay, and those who are not to go about their day. So let's unmute everybody. Maggie, can you unmute everybody? I don't know.
Thank you, Twinks.
Hi, people.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura. Good to
Thank you,
see
Laura.
you. Thank you for sharing your story.
Hi, Dale.
Susan. Who's here? There's Barbara.
Everybody.
Hello. And David.
Hi, everybody.
Hi,
Good to see everyone.
Hi, Janet.
Good morning. Hoping this is working now.
Hi, Chris and Carol.
Everybody.
Hi.
Look at it, right?
Everybody.
Good
Good morning.
Good morning. Bye.
David.
Danica.
Hi, Roseanne.
Hi,
Everybody.
Janet.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Ida.
Sonny.
Our
Kathy.
Hi, Sonny.
cacophony.
Carolyn.